On a narrow street in Manila, where the air smells of roasted corn and diesel fumes, a young boy stands barefoot on the cracked pavement. His clothes hang loose, faded and patched, his hair tangled from the day's heat. In his hands rests a guitar that looks as though it has lived 100 lives, its body chipped, its strings mismatched and frayed, held together by strips of tape. Yet when he strums, a sound emerges that silences the chaos around him. People walk past, some carrying bags of fruit, others rushing to catch the last jeepney. A few slow down, curious, but most keep moving, too preoccupied to notice a child pouring his heart into a song. Still, he sings. His voice carries a raw honesty, unpolished but piercing, like it knows secrets about loneliness and hope that even grown men struggle to name. The boy doesn't sing for money, though sometimes a kind stranger drops coins into the open guitar case at his feet. He sings because it is the only way he knows to escape. With every lyric, he imagines a world where he is not bound to these streets, where his mother doesn't worry about the next meal, where he is seen. In that moment, he is not just a poor boy on a corner. He is an artist, a dreamer, a storyteller with nothing but a broken guitar and a voice that refuses to be ignored. And though few stop to listen, he keeps singing, believing someone, somewhere, will hear. One humid evening, as the boy sang beneath a flickering streetlight, a passerby paused. The man, carrying groceries, was struck not by the boy's ragged appearance, but by the haunting beauty of his voice. Almost instinctively, he pulled out his phone and pressed record. The boy, unaware, kept singing with closed eyes, his voice lifting above the traffic like a prayer. That short video, shaky and unpolished, would soon change everything. Uploaded to the internet, it spread from one friend to another, then to strangers across the world. Within days, millions had seen the barefoot boy with the broken guitar. Comments poured in, tears, applause, disbelief. People from countries he had never heard of wrote that his song had touched their hearts. Weeks later, an envelope arrived at a cramped, crowded house in the slums. Inside was a letter and a ticket, an invitation to audition for one of the biggest talent shows in the world. His mother held the paper in trembling hands, unable to speak, while neighbors crowded the doorway, cheering and weeping. The boy, stunned, only clutched his guitar tighter. When the day finally came, he walked onto the stage in clothes too big for him, borrowed shoes slightly worn at the soles. The bright lights blinded him, the crowd murmured, the judges whispered among themselves. Some saw a child out of place. Others braced for disappointment. He stood in silence for a moment, heart pounding. And then, with the whole world watching, he began to sing. The first strum of his guitar echoed nervously through the massive theater, fragile against the weight of thousands of eyes. His hands trembled, his voice cracked on the opening note. For a moment, the audience shifted uncomfortably, some whispering, some lowering their expectations. But then he closed his eyes, breathed deeply, and let the music carry him. What came next silenced the room. His voice, once shaky, grew strong and clear, filling every corner of the stage with a raw, aching beauty. He sang Hotel California, not like a boy performing a song, but like someone who had lived every lyric, every story woven into its haunting melody. The judges leaned forward, their pens forgotten, eyes glistening as if each note unlocked something buried within them. The crowd, once hesitant, began to sway. Murmurs of awe spread like ripples on water. Strangers held hands, tears streaming down faces of people who had never met him, never known his life, yet felt his struggle in their bones. His patched clothes, his tired eyes, his broken guitar, all vanished in the glow of his voice. As the final note lingered in the air, the silence was deafening. It was not the silence of indifference, but of souls too moved to speak. Then, like thunder after a long stillness, the audience erupted, cheers, applause, whistles shaking the rafters. The boy stood frozen, chest heaving, eyes wide with disbelief. For the first time in his life, the world wasn't just listening. It was listening to him. The applause thundered on, wave after wave crashing against the stage, but the boy stood still, clutching his guitar as if afraid the moment might vanish if he moved. One judge pressed her hands over her mouth, her shoulders shaking. Another leaned back, blinking rapidly to hold back tears. Then, in a sudden burst of emotion, the head judge slammed his palm down on the golden buzzer. The sound was like an explosion. Confetti rained from above in shimmering gold, swirling and dancing in the spotlight. The boy gasped, his small frame trembling as the weight of it all crashed over him. He dropped to his knees, burying his face in his hands, overwhelmed by the roar of the crowd chanting his name. The judges rose from their seats, clapping, some wiping their eyes. One walked onto the stage and knelt beside him, whispering words the microphones barely caught, "You're not invisible anymore. The world sees you now." At those words, the boy lifted his tear-streaked face, staring at the golden storm falling around him as if it were a dream he might wake from. He had spent nights singing for coins under streetlights, unseen and unheard. Now, the very song that once echoed through empty streets had opened a door to a future he never dared to imagine. And in that instant, surrounded by strangers who felt like family, he realized this was no longer just his victory. It was hope for every forgotten child waiting to be heard. Backstage, the boy sat in a quiet corner, gold confetti still tangled in his hair. Reporters and stagehands buzzed around him, but he barely noticed. He held his guitar close, whispering softly, "This is for every child who thinks they're invisible." His mother, tears streaming down her face, wrapped her arms around him, and for the first time in years, her embrace felt lighter, no longer weighed down by despair, but lifted by possibility. The story of that moment spread faster than the song itself. News outlets replayed the video, social media overflowed with messages of love. Strangers from distant countries sent letters and donations, not just for him, but for children like him who had been left behind. In small towns and big cities, families gathered around their televisions, watching a barefoot boy from the streets remind the world what hope sounds like. And something remarkable happened. People who had never met him began to act. Teachers told his story in classrooms. Musicians played his song in churches. Communities raised funds for children in need. His voice had crossed oceans, but his message had rooted itself in hearts everywhere. He was no longer just a boy with a broken guitar. He had become a symbol, a reminder that greatness can rise from the humblest places, that kindness can turn a stranger's voice into a shared dream, and that the human spirit, when lifted by compassion, can sing louder than any stage, louder than any song.